Bonjour, and welcome into The Cave, the podcast where we dive deep into song lyrics that resonate with our personal experiences. I am Julia, your host. In each episode, we take a closer look at a specific part of a song's lyrics, unpacking the emotions and stories they evoke, and connecting them to our own lives. Whether you're here to find comfort, understanding, or simply a shared moment of reflection, I'm glad you're here. Today, we are diving into a question that Loathe asked in their song Two-Way Mirror. What would you do if you were not afraid? I don't know about you, but I would do a lot of things. I don't have any phobia, but boy am I afraid of everything. I wanted to use this line in the podcast because I once acted on a scary decision which was life-changing, and this is the best thing that could have happened to me. As you can probably tell from my accent, I am French. I spent the first 25 years of my life in France. And once I was done with my studies, I had the opportunity to get a job in Augsburg in the south of Germany. I applied with the mindset of, if I don't do it, I will regret it. The timing was perfect. I didn't have any kids or any responsibilities like a house or anything. And getting a job right after your studies can be hard. However, when I was told that I actually got the job, my mindset shifted. When I got the call, the recruiter was super enthusiastic about giving me the good news. I guess he did not expect my reaction, which was basically no reaction. Just a, okay, thank you. It wasn't the typical excited reaction you would expect when someone gets a job offer. And that because it's gotten real and I got scared. I was mostly afraid of leaving my people behind, my friends, my family, and my boyfriend at that time. But I thought, this is only a 1.5 year contract, I will then come back to be with everyone again, and meanwhile I will cross the border and face the bad train traffic in France and Germany. Well, this was 2018, and now here I am, 6 years later, recording this podcast from my apartment in Munich. And not a single regret. My boyfriend at the time and I broke up less than 6 months after I moved to Germany, and it wasn't even because of the distance, so it would have happened anyway. Can you imagine how bad I would have felt if I had stayed in France for our relationship? I know I would have felt resentment towards him because of my own decision, so for sure it would have not ended well. And add to that I would have had big regrets. Fear is often seen as a bad thing associated with cowardness. But to be brave, you have to be afraid first. Otherwise, you're just being reckless. Also, our bodies are meant to feel fear. I am no scientist, so this might not be super accurate, but I guess the reason we experience fear is to protect ourselves. This is what is creating this survival instinct, where the fight or flight response comes from. Our brains still trigger this response, even though we no longer need to run from wild animals. So seriously, brain, you don't need to activate this just for me to send an email. Also, sometimes our brain takes it to the next level with anxiety. I don't experience so much of it, or should I say on a level where it refrains me from doing things. So I don't want to talk for the people who do, without knowing much about it. But I just want to say that it is also completely valid and okay to not go to this party, or not do a big thing because anxiety prevents you to. In no way do I want to say, stop being scared and just do it. This is not linked in here. Anyway, without experiencing anxiety, we can be scared or worried about something, and think about which bad outcomes can come out of it. And this is when you feel the fear. And the way we think influences our brain in sending happy or sad or scared signals. So if we think about a scary outcome, our brain will think of it happening now, and that's when we feel nervous. But think about it the other way. Do you know when it's your last day of work before going on holiday, how happy you are? Because you're thinking so much about being on holiday that you trick your brain that it's happening. Well, for fear, it's the same but opposite. Of course, it is way easier said than done to just think, don't be scared, it's gonna be okay. I often have two voices in my head, and unfortunately, the one thinking the bad things talk louder than the one trying to rationalize things and telling me that it's all going to be okay. We can be scared for different reasons. I guess the reason that is the most primal is to be afraid of being hurt physically. For my first tattoo appointment, I was very excited, but really also scared. Not to have something on my skin permanently, because I had thought a lot about this tattoo, so I was sure about it, but I was scared for it to hurt. And I had an amazing experience with the tattoo artist, Lucas Wagner, Wasted Happy Youth on Instagram. Go check him out. He knew it was my first tattoo and instantly made me feel comfortable. For the first line, he told me that he would just do a small one so I can assess the pain. He did it and I was like, that's it? It was a very easy body part, behind the arm. But still, how many of us experienced that for our first tattoo? Well, look at us now. That's when I realized that this is going to be a problem for my wallet, but this is an issue for future Julia. We can also be afraid of what people might think of us. Self-confidence is not given to anyone, and definitely not me. So yeah, we don't embarrass ourselves so much, but at what cost? Once I was asked what was the most embarrassing moment in my life. Well, I couldn't think of anything, because I usually don't put myself in situations where I can embarrass myself. Of course, sometimes I cringe at interactions I had with people because I feel like I was awkward, but no big embarrassment that people will still remember to this day. Or I hope so. Right now, I am talking to you on this podcast, but this almost has never seen the light of day. I actually had to replace the fear of doing something bad with the fear of lacking accountability. I talked about this project to different people to share with them because I was excited about it, but also because once I did, I knew I couldn't back down. Because I am more afraid of looking like someone who doesn't stand their ground than someone who tries and doesn't succeed. This podcast is one of the hundreds of ideas I come up with at night, but never pursue because of fear. This lack of self-confidence also comes with the fear of what we might think of ourselves. Most of the time, we are our biggest critics. I can be very hard on myself, and I realized that what seems like laziness is actually a fear of failure and not being good enough. If I am not instantly good at something, I don't want it, and I feel like I am trash for not achieving it, even though no one can do that. But still, when something is not perfect, I don't get full satisfaction from it. There are a lot of things I say I am not good at, but actually, even though it's true at the moment, I take it as something permanent. When for most of those things, I have done it a couple times and just give up. I am not good at makeup. Or isn't it that I just have not tried it? Yeah, definitely. I always put on the same mascara. Of course, I'm not going to get a perfect full mug if I don't try and look like I had too much spray tan or got hit in the face first. I should replace I am not good at by I haven't tried. I used to rush through things because if they were not going to be perfect, I thought, why bother? This probably comes from being very good at school from a very young age, even though I didn't put much work into it. So I was praised for being so good. Let me tell you, when I was just the second best of the class, I was raging. But at the same time, for me it was natural, things were easy. Of course, that didn't last long. And when I arrived in high school, I had to actually get to work, which I didn't know how to. That's why I failed my high school diploma and had to pass it the year after. But even that, which can be seen as failure, just put me to success for my studies because it taught me how to work to get good grades. So never a failure, always a lesson. And when I was writing my notes, I wrote first, always a failure, never a lesson. So you see my unconscious, it's always self-loathing. At least with this podcast, I found myself paying way more attention to the details and putting a lot of work and thinking into everything I do. And I am having so much fun. I know it's still not perfect, and this is actually pretty hard for me. But hey, something done is better than a perfect nothing, and we all have to start somewhere. Then, we can also be afraid to do something because we might have something to lose, financially, for example. This is why people stay at jobs they don't like or don't start a business, for example. In these cases, I guess fear can be useful. It helps us avoid acting impulsively and risking everything. I recently quit a job I was not happy at. I didn't have any other opportunities. As I am talking, I still don't. But I was lucky to be able to prepare myself the best I could financially to have a few months without a salary. And I am so relieved I did, both quitting and preparing. Fear is what kept me grounded by first preparing my exit and then actually leaving. We can also be afraid to lose a relationship, which was one of the reasons I was afraid of moving to Germany. But also, if you're with someone and don't feel like it used to be, are you afraid of losing the person and relationship as it is right now? Or are you afraid of losing what you had before? If you are asking yourself whether you should leave the relationship too much, even though you are afraid to do so, fear might be pulling you down instead of saving you. My longest and also first real relationship lasted 6 years, and we both know it was over long before that. But I guess we were both afraid to leave it, for the sentimental side, but also a more practical one. We rented an apartment together, I was still studying, but one day we just looked at each other and said something like, "It's not working anymore, right?" "Yeah, no." And that was it. And I felt instantly relieved. I am not saying it was easy, but it was very necessary. We can also be afraid of conflict. This is where my fear of expressing myself comes up. I don't want to make other people upset, like a good people pleaser than I am. Well, in the end, I am not pleasing a lot of people. Conflicts aren't inherently bad if handled correctly, but I have never learned how to do that. So whether I just avoid it and do what I think the other person would like me to do, which is not always what they would like, by the way, or I just go straight into it, which happens very rarely. I really need to feel attacked for it. And when I do, it ends up with me crying. So, brain, why are you doing this? Is that also a response to fear, by the way? That's a good representation of the fight or flight reaction. But I would like to put my brain into the we can talk about it calmly and no one will hurt anyone mode. But for all of these times we were afraid, how many scary decisions do we regret? And on the opposite, how many opportunities have we missed because of that? Which are the ones that we regret the most? Thank you for listening to this episode. If you relate to it, I hope that it can help you make this big decision. If you like the episode, please leave a review and follow me on Instagram at IntoTheCavePod. You can also share with me what lyrics you relate to the most. I would love to hear those. I will see you again next week with new hard-hitting lyrics. Be kind to yourselves. Bye!